Nightmares 3 was a very important game to me. Little Nightmares as a series is very important to me. Little Nightmares has been the cause of a lot of creative inspiration for me over the years, and I can't imagine myself really being in the same spot without it. Something about these games are just really endearing to me. So when the new game got announced, I lost my shit. I was beyond excited that my favorite series at the time was going to get another game after what felt like almost dead silence. However, despite the trailer looking very exciting, one thing a lot of people noticed had nothing to do with the trailer itself, but the people who made it. Or should I say the people who made the game. The first two Little Nightmares games that we all fell in love with were developed by Tarsier Studios. They had a very unique style, and their sense of atmosphere and visual storytelling is really what carried the series more than just this unique 2.5D gameplay style. Little Nightmares 3 was not being developed by Tarsier, but instead Supermassive Games, a studio I actually like. They're the creators of Until Dawn and Qlomorey, and actually played all of their Dark Pictures anthology games. If you don't know what kind of game Supermassive makes, they really specialize in this niche cinematic movie games where depending on what choices you make, it determines which characters survive by the end of the story. I really enjoy these types of games, but they can be a bit of an acquired taste for some people, and I get that. They were a very interesting choice, but one I could definitely respect, as they did work on the Enhanced Edition for Little Nightmares 2. Anyway, as more and more trailers were released for the game, a lot of anticipation and excitement was built up. This game felt like it was going to do a lot of new things with the formula, new mechanics, new characters, very unique environments. It felt so refreshing. It was also backed up with a podcast that absolutely kicked ass. Seriously, go listen to it. It's legitimately the best media to come from the franchise that I have seen, or should I say heard. Little Nightmares 3 had some big standards to meet thanks to Tarsier, and now that the game has been released, I will be reviewing it to determine if it met any of those standards. At the end, I will rate it from 1 to 10, so let's get into the review. Beware, as while I will try to avoid direct major spoilers, that does not mean there won't be any spoilers in this review that might get written in. We are starting with gameplay because it is very important to establish if this actually felt like a Little Nightmares game. Gladly, they made no significant changes to the gameplay style. Actually, if anything, I think they did not make enough changes to the gameplay style. But we'll get more into that later in the review. If you still enjoyed a niche 2.5D puzzle platformer style that these games are so iconic for, then don't worry since it went absolutely nowhere. Most puzzles in this game are very much what you would expect from a Little Nightmares game, manipulating the environment by pushing and pulling objects with the occasional puzzle that has you interacting with large machinery. One thing that they did to refresh the gameplay format just a little bit was having you pick from two characters to play as. One of them, Lo as he is named, has a bow he can use to shoot ropes, buttons, and even enemies in one of the game's very few combat sections. The other was Alone, and she was equipped with a large wrench which could be occasionally used on machinery to aid in solving puzzles and also finish off enemies during combat. I will say Alone's wrench felt a little half-baked. I feel like she did not have enough interesting puzzles with it. You were just pressing one button for her to activate things with, and there's not much else to it. Most of the time, you have to shoot something. It's just a matter of knowing when to shoot something. With not many layers to add to the puzzle, it gets really redundant after a while, even if it does feel satisfying to shoot and whack things. The combat in the game was kind of not really there. I get that the combat was sort of a weak point to people in Little Nightmares 2, but if it was going to be in this game that little, then you might as well have just not had it in the game at all. The beetle monsters in the Acropolis, you only fight them once. The puppets from the game's Carnival chapter, you get to fight them maybe in like 2 scenes, but that's pretty much it. These plant monster things, I don't even really think they even have an official name. They're just really glorified puzzle creatures. You just shoot them with Lo's bow, and they die. They don't really move, the combat felt very underbaked. And it's a shame, because these scenes do give some moments of the game a much needed rush. There are also these umbrellas that the two characters find in the game's first chapter. These are used in a few very lovely platforming sections where they have to use these comedically large umbrellas to fly the winds of the desert city they have found themselves in. These parts were really fun, but as soon as you get to the game's second chapter, they just stop using them. It's not even explained in the game why they stopped using them. And it's kind of annoying. Why introduce a genuinely cool new mechanic and then just not use it for the rest of the game? Other than that, I don't really have much else to say about the gameplay, at least for this review. Other than that it's mostly more of the same, with a few new additions here and there. Atmosphere and sounds. Before we talk about the game's story, I want to bring up the atmosphere. If you have ever played a Little Nightmares game, then you would know that the immersive atmosphere and sound design of these games are much more important than the overall gameplay. I am a person who believes that games, even horror games, should all be fun in gameplay, atmosphere, and story all together. But I have always given Little Nightmares games a pass because of just how damn well they nail it every time with the atmosphere. So, did the new studio manage to hit the target in that regard? Luckily, they hit the fucking center. This game has amazing sound design. The visuals are absolutely beautiful looking, and I am so glad they took the game's atmosphere as seriously as Tarsier did. They absolutely did phenomenal of these larger-than-life shots that Little Nightmares games are so good at. I am so glad that they kept these camera pan moments where it just zooms out on something huge behind the very teeny tiny looking characters. Every little noise you hear in the distance feels like it has a purpose behind it. Sometimes you'll hear the humming of a disturbing monster from the distance. Other points you'll hear the creaking and crumbling of an unstable feeling building you are in, as you feel absolutely weak. Other points of the game go into an eerie silence as it builds up some of its cinematic moments. I am in love with this game's immersive feel, and they definitely did not miss a mark on that. Story and characters. Okay, I don't even know where to begin with this. I won't be going in depth to this game's story or its characters. This review is meant to share my overall thoughts on the experience, not to dissect the game's entire narrative. Besides that, like I said before, this review is not meant to have too many major spoilers in it, so all I'll say is that I was more confused and engaged when I first played. But as I replayed it and paid a little more attention to some of the more subtle details and started piecing things together, I did start tearing up at the end of the game. If you have seen the game's ending, then you know exactly what I mean by that. I think the game's story is solid, but if you go into it casually without looking at some of the other media for Little Nightmares that is outside of the games, then you are going to be very confused. It's a solid story, but it felt very all over the place. Like, it did not feel focused like the other games. Little Nightmares 1 was all about hunger and what being in a disturbing world that drains your humanity could do to a child trying to survive. Little Nightmares 2 is about loneliness and escapism. Little Nightmares 3, I don't really know. It just feels like it hops between different themes at points. I'm not completely sure how to feel about that, other than it definitely feels different from the last two games. So that was the three main things I wanted to talk about. Overall, Little Nightmares 3 is a solid entry, but it plays it a little too safe. It does not feel like a complete attempt to change the formula, but instead a half-baked one. I couldn't go much more in depth about how every little thing in the game felt underutilized, but this review is meant to be more of an overview of my overall thoughts in the game. I may make separate videos though, going more into detail about those little things I felt were not used well enough in the game. For now, I believe it's time to rate this game. I give Little Nightmares 3 a 7.5 out of 10. Unfortunately, it just did not feel like a complete experience when I played it, but more of a shadow of one. It, however, does still feel like a high-quality entry in the series, but just not the most memorable one, unfortunately. I still love this game, and I can't wait to see what Supermassive does with this series next. Little Nightmares 3 may not be the best Little Nightmares game, but for a first attempt from a new studio, it's a pretty damn good attempt. Anyway, thank you for watching my review. I am a very passionate Little Nightmares fan, so this game did mean a lot to me. If you want to help me take over the world, then please do subscribe, or even like this video. That helps too. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Little Nightmares 3. I would love to hear from you. Have an amazing day, and bye-bye now.